FBI agents have confirmed they have arrested the suspected leaker of classified Pentagon documents. We will find out tonight who he might be and what his motivations were. Also on the programme, the oil and gas industry. Are they doing enough to meet government set targets on methane and oil spills? We'll talk diabetes. The UK experiencing a rapidly escalating crisis with an all-time high for type 2 and type 1 combined. And abort. The European Space Agency cancelling its launch today, but the rocket that is heading for Jupiter and its moons will be rescheduled for takeoff tomorrow. We will tell you all about that. But we start with the breaking news in the last few minutes that US investigators have arrested the source of the leaked classified documents. The New York Times is reporting that the man they are holding is a 21-year-old member of the intelligence wing in the Massachusetts Air National Guard. It is alleged that Jack Teixeira oversaw a private online group named Thug Shaker Central, where 20 to 30 people, mostly young men and teenagers, came together over a shared love of God, video games and guns. This morning, the Washington Post carried an interview with a young member of the online chat room where these documents first appeared, a group formed at the early part of the pandemic. The teenager identified the source by a pseudonym, OG. He was a man, he said, who knew about secrets the government was withholding from ordinary people. OG had spent hours writing up classified documents to share with his companions in the Discord server he controlled. The group included people from Ukraine and Russia. For months, says the Post source, OG had posted verbatim transcripts that he'd brought home from his job on a military base.
Server really became very close during the pandemic when we were all locked down together, and every single day we would watch movies, play games, do activities together. We'd stream our houses and mess around and dance and have fun. We didn't realize the sheer, just immense nature of these leaks until a bit later. I spoke to OG about 2 days ago before he gave his final goodbye to us. He signed off saying that he did not want to be associated with any of us as to bring anything bad to him.
A short time ago, the US Attorney General Merrick Garland gave this update on the arrest.
Today, the Justice Department arrested Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard. FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without incident. He will have an initial appearance at the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. I want to thank the FBI, Justice Department prosecutors, and our colleagues at the Department of Defense for their diligent work on this case. This investigation is ongoing. We will share more information at the appropriate time. Thanks, everyone.
Earlier this evening, the Pentagon called the leak of classified information a deliberate criminal act. This is Brigadier General Pat Ryder.
The department is taking the issue of this unauthorized disclosure very seriously. We continue to work around the clock, along with the interagency and the intelligence community, to better understand the scope, scale, and impact of these leaks.
A reminder that all this information sat on the server for months, a grab bag of sensitive information, how the US had penetrated the Russian Ministry of Defense, clandestine deals that were being done between Israel and South Korea, previously unknown information on satellite surveillance, a pending arms deal between Egypt and Russia, on and on. Joining me is George Beebe. He's the former CIA intelligence analyst, staff advisor on Russia matters to Vice President Dick Cheney and Director of Grand Strategy at the Quincy Institute. Thank you very much for being with us. Does it surprise you that a 21-year-old within the intelligence wing of the National Guard would have access to this vast amount of information?
Well, yes, it does. A lot of this was very, very highly classified information, and I think the question of how he got access to it is going to be foremost in the minds of investigators.
We're told that usually intelligence is compartmentalized, but he surely wouldn't need to know if he was sitting on Cape Cod, a base at Cape Cod, whether South Korea was sending missiles via Poland to Ukraine. I can't understand why that sort of information would be within his domain.
Right. And one of the questions that I'm sure investigators will be looking into was whether he was accessing information illegitimately, that he found a way of hacking into things he didn't have access to, or he was sent information by other people that he shouldn't have had access to.
When you read the Washington Post story today, I don't know about you, but when I read it, it seemed to me that this was it was a closed group, invitation only, where he was clearly the leader, or was seen as the leader. And it didn't seem as if he was disseminating this information for political purposes. More, it was a case of one-upmanship. And at a time when a lot of these people were lonely because of the pandemic, he seemingly saw this as a way to gain credit among the group.
Well, I think that's exactly the picture that is emerging from this Washington Post report and from other reporting here. This was not a case of a young man that was looking to betray his country, although he was clearly doing things that were illegal and very harmful to American national security. And he wasn't doing this on behalf of some foreign intelligence organization. He didn't appear to have a political motive. This seemed to be a situation where he was looking to impress his peers, young men, teenagers, that found all this quite impressive.
That said, you look at the background, he was clearly a disgruntled person. He clearly had suspicions of intelligence agencies, government overreach. What sort of vetting would there have been done for someone with access to this sort of information?
Well, this is the sort of thing that investigators try to look into in their background investigations prior to granting security clearances. But those sorts of investigations, can't account for everything. They're inherently imperfect, and you can miss some things. So, what happens in these sorts of closed online groups can be a difficult thing for investigators to stay abreast of. You can't undertake 24/7, 365 days a year investigations of what people that have security clearances are doing in their private lives.
I was going to ask you about that because there'll be a lot of adults at home who won't know what the Discord server is, but their children certainly will because it's a place where a lot of gamers go. Do you think there's a blind spot here for the intelligence agencies getting access to these groups?
Well, a difficult question to answer because one obvious response to that is, yes, there is a blind spot and there should be, because you don't actually want to live in a society where the US government is monitoring what everybody is doing online at any given time, who they're associating with, what they're reading, what they're posting. Now, if you're to do that sort of thing, then yeah, you can identify these sorts of problems, perhaps prevent them. But do any of us want to live in a society where our government is doing that to private citizens or even to people in the military? That's a difficult thing to answer.
How would you characterize this? Because for me, as you've already explained, it doesn't seem to be political. It's not an Edward Snowden. It's not of that ilk, but it is a bit more like the Chelsea Manning, or Bradley Manning as she was then, who was, this low-grade tech whiz within the army, sitting on a lonely base in Iraq, and it was this sort of data which was her entertainment. It seems to me more of that ilk. It's happened again. So what sort of reforms do the intelligence agencies have to put in place?
Well, I'm not sure that's an easy question to answer at this point. They're still very early in the investigative stage. But I do think that the accused individual in this case is facing a very dire future. I believe that law enforcement is going to be quite harsh in how it deals with him, and in the hope that this will have a deterrent effect on other people that might at some future point contemplate this sort of thing.